minutes into 10 a.m. in Central African time. Thank you very much for tuning in to the Journal, channelafrica.co.za, as we broadcast all over the world, otherwise on the African continent, across various regions. It is channel PAS10 via satellite. So for many parents, a child's height and weight may seem like something simple, as a milestone to just keep track of their growth. But we often see that this is a very important clue about a child's overall health and development. So while children naturally grow at different rates, the noticeable slowdown or change in their growth patterns can sometimes signal an underlying issue that should not be overlooked. Right? That's exactly what we're going to be talking about, looking at growth hormone deficiency as a possible cause, and explore what else could be happening with a child's development at growth at this time, and what to pay attention to. Sara Norcross joins me on the line in her capacity as the General Manager at Novo Nordisk here in South Africa. Sara, a pleasure to have you on the program. Welcome.
Good morning, Mmatsheko, to you and your listeners. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. I think this definitely is one of the most important discussions we've had on this particular feature, Sara. Let's talk about perhaps to get perspective from a healthcare professional perspective. When we talk about a child's growth, what does healthy growth generally look like?
And I think you've been touching on it as well when you introduce the segment around, a child's healthy development and growth can be many different factors. So healthy growth generally means a predictable growth over time. So it's not just that at one point in time to see whether the child looks like they're at a good stage in their development. It's, are they continuing to develop, continuing to grow over time? We look at healthy growth not being like an average size or not being the same as other children, which we can often do as parents. But instead, it's, are they following what we understand as the pattern and the trajectory that we expect with children? And when we track their progression and we track their height over time, are they on the general path that we would expect for that child? And that is a good early indicator of healthy growth in a child.
Okay. I mean, that's simple enough to understand. But an extension to that response, Sara, medically and perhaps even nutritionally, very important. When we look at development factors, what exactly are we looking for, if that's the right question, when a child is not growing as expected?
Yeah, so and when we're looking at our child, I guess some of the early indicators of when it would be a good time to seek advice and to just check that your child is having healthy growth is to look things like, is your child at the same size as peers, similar size to other girls or boys at the same age? Does it look like the growth has slowed down? So is your child no longer growing as fast as you've seen before? If you are following the trajectory of a child, and there are great tools out there that every parent has available to them, are you seeing that your child is still following those established and predicted growth patterns? And then when we look at older children, so, when we're moving into adolescence, is puberty happening as expected, or is puberty potentially delayed? And so these are some of the factors that as a parent or a caregiver looking after a child, you can really look for to have an early indication, because what we see is that children are being diagnosed around the ages of 4 to 7. So this is a problem that does need to be diagnosed early. Because if it's diagnosed early, if the right assessments are done and a child has been identified as having growth hormone deficiency, then there's great effective treatments out there that can be then implemented very effectively for that child to ensure that we really do unlock that child's potential and we don't then have issues later in life.
Absolutely. And I think that is definitely an important one to note for the parents who may happen to catch this broadcast live, is that there are interventions. You're definitely not alone. So when you do consult, you definitely could get the answers to your questions. What is considered normal monitoring frequency? So how often should I be checking for height and weight and all those things? Because you mentioned another very important thing around looking at, the child's peers. Parents often do that and compare their children to their peers. But we don't want them to assume that because the child is shorter or taller, that it's simply genetic. So, how
Yeah.
frequently should I be monitoring the growth?
Generally, what we see with younger children is they grow a lot faster. And so there's usually more regular check-ins with a healthcare professional. That's generally happening as part of a child's early development. And so that is more frequently than once a year. That is probably happening, with every few months, and then every 6 months, and so on. And I think as a child gets older, at least once a year is the check to see that progress on a child, if not faster. Because generally, if you look at the charts, they look at a kind of age by year, or and then a height or expected height for that child. And so, at a minimum, you want to be doing it once a year, if not more frequently.
All right, once a year sounds doable. Okay, it's just once a year minimum. 18 minutes into 10 a.m. in Central African time, we are speaking to the General Manager of Novo Nordisk South Africa, Sara Norcross, and we're looking at the growth and development of a child, what is considered normal, what is not, and we're going to continue to unpack this conversation, really looking at growth hormone deficiency. What exactly is that, and other factors that could be stifling a child's growth at this time. We take a break and return.
Call us on +27 63 406 9126 and contribute to the conversation.
Zilipendwa na Abedi Jean de la Croix.
Tuambie ulianza lini safari yako ya muziki, tuanzie hapo hapo.
Mimi nimeanza safari yangu ya muziki ilikuwa ni mnamo mwaka wa 2019 nchini hapa Uganda, Kampala.
Ulianzia muziki wako nchini Uganda. Okay, vizuri sana. Kwa sasa wewe unapatikana nchini Uganda. Tunaambiwa kwamba unapatikana katika kambi ya wakimbizi ya Nakivale nchini Uganda. Maisha yako ya kila siku kambini yakoje?
Maisha hapa ni magumu, sio marahisi hivyo, kwa sababu kambi ya Uganda ni tofauti na kambi zingine, kwa sababu wakimbizi huwa sio wote ambao wanapata sijui kupokea. Kuna ambao wanapokea na kuna wale wa kitambo kama sisi hatunaga tena au masuala ya kupokea. So ndio maisha ni magumu sana hapa kambi. Unajuta muda kufocus sana kwenye muziki unakuwa hautoshi sana. Muda wote unakuwa na focus yote
ya muda unakuwa ni mdogo sana.
Zilipendwa kila Jumamosi kuanzia saa 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati hadi saa 1 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
The African Child on the channel.
Well, thank you very much for staying with us. 20 minutes into 10 a.m. exactly on the clock in Central African time. And we continue our conversation really looking at healthy growth and of a child that is, and perhaps the warning signs that may require closer attention, and also the importance of being able to seek professional advice when you have concerns. And there's no such thing as the concern is too little, or you can overlook it, or you can put it on the back burner. If there's anything you're concerned about, this is definitely an opportunity for you. There are opportunities for you to explore further with a healthcare professional. Sara Norcross continues to chat to me. She's joining me in her capacity as the General Manager of Novo Nordisk South Africa. Sara, perhaps before we continue and look into growth hormone deficiency, talk to us about the work of Novo Nordisk South Africa.
Sure. So Novo Nordisk South Africa, we've been here since the 1960s. Actually, South Africa was one of the first countries that we established ourselves in globally as a company that was originally built in and established in Denmark. And the reason for that is because when you look at the continent of Africa and the important role that South Africa plays, there's a huge unmet need and burden of disease that exists here. So it was important to have a company established here. We're a company that more traditionally we're known for diabetes, and that's where our original work in bringing insulins to the masses started over 100 years ago. And we've branched into other areas like obesity and cardiovascular diseases, which are all metabolic diseases as well. But actually, what most people don't know us for is our decades of research and work in the rare disease space. And growth hormone deficiency is an example of rare diseases. And the reason we call them rare diseases is because there's about 7,000 rare diseases. And we know that about 95% of rare diseases currently have no effective treatment. So research is required because though these diseases aren't diseases that are impacting millions in a country, like something like diabetes, they're impacting an individual. And often they're impacting a child because they're often genetic diseases. And I think every child, every person deserves to have effective treatment for something that exists. And this is why we continue to put research into these diseases so that things like growth hormone deficiency or haemophilia, other areas, do have effective treatments available for them.
Right, right. That's so important. Absolutely. Research
Mhm.
is very, very important because without scientific intervention and research, there can be no solution to speak of when we look at those rare diseases, as you mentioned them. 7,000. Oh my
Mhm.
goodness. I had no
Mhm.
idea it was so many. That's
And so
quite a
many
number.
without treatment, which is really scary, and which is why research really does need to continue in this space.
Absolutely, a lot of research needs to go in. And speaking of research, let's talk about how we've researched the growth hormone deficiency. Perhaps you can give us perspective there, as this could be a possible cause for this poor growth as we address it for young children. What exactly is growth hormone deficiency?
I mean, growth hormone deficiency in a nutshell is that an individual and often a child is really not developing and their growth is not happening as expected. That's the simplest term. Because growth hormone, we traditionally think of it as for height, and that is the easiest way to track it, is a child hitting the right height parameters. But growth hormone is needed for everything. Growth hormone impacts our teeth development, impacts our hair growth, it impacts everything in our body to ensure that we are continuing to develop. And that is never more prominent than with our children, right? The problem with growth hormone is sometimes it is an actual deficiency, which is a genetic challenge. And so that is not something that's related to lifestyle or another condition. It is literally a genetic problem that we can effectively treat. But growth hormone can also be impacted by nutrition. If a child's not getting the right level of nutrition, then that can impact their development. If a child has another underlying health condition, for example, celiac disease, which again impacts the body's ability to really absorb what they need from food, then that can impact a child's development as well. So there are other factors that can impact a child's natural and healthy growth development. And that's why you gave such a great statement there, which is if you're in doubt, just go speak to a healthcare professional on this. It's much better to go follow it up and be reassured that your child's healthy than to not be concerned or to think it's fine and not follow it up. Because if there is a problem, then that can be identified really quickly and that child can get the treatment they need. So if in doubt, please just go speak to a healthcare professional.
100%, 100%. Very good advice, Sarah. So, if I have perhaps picked up a concern or have identified that there may be a need for further assessment, can you perhaps give us an indication of what that process might look like? What does it typically involve, and what happens during these evaluations?
Yeah, so I mean, generally, obviously, you're going to speak to the healthcare professional, and with a child, there's usually a recording of a child's stats in the early years, and if a child's going for a vaccination or for a clinic, those are great opportunities for a child's height and development to be checked and recorded as well. So the first assessment is usually looking at that. They'll be looking at the history because it's really hard to just, I think, do one measure and for that point in time to give the full story. You do need measures over time. So the healthcare professional will be looking at that. They'll be looking at the rate of growth, and if they see a concern, then likely that child will be referred to a specialist. So usually a pediatric endocrinologist, who will then work to identify what could be the issues. Is it something else like nutrition? Do we need to look at the child's diet? Is there another underlying health condition, or is it growth hormone deficiency? And if it is growth hormone deficiency, then that specialist will really work not just with the child, but really with the parent or caregiver on how to really support that child's journey. And I really want to just jump on this actually because we're talking about a rare disease, and I think, you know, as a parent or even a child, because I've got young children, and they'd be aware of something like this, and what it could mean for them or for their child. And we've just had the Football World Cup, and I know that many of your listeners will probably know the name Lionel Messi. But they
Yes.
may not know that Lionel Messi was also diagnosed with growth hormone deficiency as a
Wow.
child.
Okay. I had no
But he
idea.
got treatment, he got diagnosed, he got treatment, and look at what the potential is of Lionel Messi today. So it clearly shows that it does not at all stop you reaching your full potential as long as you get diagnosed and treated.
Oh, that is a great example. That is a great example of a superstar who then had, you know, somebody intervene and make sure that they access the right treatment. And now here he is, one of the most famous individuals in the world, not only on the football field, but just in general. That's such a great story. Sarah, before I let you go, we'd like to determine whether Novo Nordisk perhaps provides any patient support at this time, or is there any available educational resources that can help families understand, you know, growth hormone deficiencies and the treatment journey?
Sure. So the great news in South Africa is that growth hormone treatment is available both in the private and the public sector. So
Okay.
treatment is available for anyone that needs it. We don't have a difference in terms of treatment availability. And that is amazing news and wonderful news, and hopefully reassuring news for anyone with a child where you do have a concern. There are great tools that are available through the healthcare professionals and through the kits, but also on our own websites. We have our own websites on the Novo Nordisk platform that give guidance and advice about these diseases and the possible options as well. And there are great options out there. I mean, Novo Nordisk, we've invested in growth hormone treatment. And our treatments also, once an individual needs to start using the treatment, the Novo Nordisk treatment uniquely doesn't need refrigeration, which is great because, you know, we are living in a country where electricity supply and the ability to refrigerate 24/7 is not always guaranteed.
Of course.
And the other thing that's also beneficial with the Novo Nordisk treatment is that we are talking about children. I mean, I'm a mother of three. I have a young child who also needs to take daily treatment, and that's a challenge. But with these treatments, and they are, you know, small injections, that's a tough thing to do as a parent every day for a child. And so one of the things that's unique in the Novo Nordisk growth hormone treatment is actually it's formulated to offer the least pain and offer the least discomfort for a child, because this is a child, this is a parent, this is a caregiver, and we want them to have the best possible experience, because then they have the best possible outcomes. And then we have our next Lionel Messi's coming along.
Absolutely. Oh, Sarah, thank you very much. You've shared very generously a lot of important information. And I hope that as you were listening, you were taking down some notes so that you are really just as effective in your parenting as you are in other parts of your life. Really, really important. Sara Norcross joining us in her capacity as the General Manager of Novo Nordisk, South Africa. It is 10:31. Figileni Wati standing by with the latest sports.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet.